So there's almost every speaker has talked about the just the EU mandates, also about private development. It's creating requirements for all up and down the value chain for development and then also importantly financing of renewable energy sources. But they also all touched upon the fact that capital is on the sidelines, and so getting folks for getting them rates of return that they're comfortable with at the risks that they account for has been very difficult, and then ties into our first keynote speaker, which is how do you get government policy to integrate all of this stuff. So I think it's been a very interesting and constructive exchange in terms of all of that. Ultimately I think it will all boil down to, one of our panelists talked about de-risking that slice of capital, that slice of development, in order to get those sorts of investors off the sidelines. So we had panelists talk about operational risk, and you can price that in a certain way, almost like a commodity. You have construction risk, which is like venture capital risk, for which people demand high rates of return. And so slicing up those various different appetites for risk and all the slicing those different components of a return for targeted at different investors. That's what, and marrying all of those up, I think will be the challenge in terms of, especially in terms of like large projects like offshore wind projects in the UK, where the costs are close to the cost of a small nuclear project with risks of development that are similar. Very important for all of those, and then government being a stakeholder as well to figure out how do you get all of that together at some stable, acknowledged and agreed upon rates of return that make all the financing possible. I'm very active in energy, going back almost 30 years. I've been practicing myself in, before they were monikers, but it became known as project finance for 28 years. And most of those have involved projects going back to the 1980s, coal-fired projects, nuclear projects, gas-fired projects, and the early years of renewables, wind projects and solar. And so we've been in the energy space for a very long time, and we now have an organized sector which I co-chair, our global sector. We operate globally, and we back in the early 2002 or 3, not because of wisdom or foresight, but just in terms of where our clients were going, we could see that the momentum for projects in the renewable and clean energy space were just really strong, and we could see that's where our clients were heading in terms of both development of projects, and we represent a lot of banks and investment banks, and they were all heading in the same direction in terms of financing of projects. So today, for example, we have probably the leading, and by far the leading energy practice in Italy. We have 120 lawyers in Italy, a significant percentage of whom are involved in renewable energy projects. We have close over 75% of all the renewable projects done in North America, going back to 2003. We're representing 40% of the winning bidders in South Africa. So just as an example, it's just a very global market and a very global client base, and so it requires a global effort on the part of a globalized firm to have all these pieces in different places. This is a fantastic event. We've had other experiences with Merger Market, and I think you're very different than almost all the other conference organizers. And why I say that is, in the US you call it the pay-for-play model, which is which lends to conferences that are fairly shallow, which are the prime object of which is to market, whether it's lawyers or it's really not about getting industry participants together in a forum that's dedicated towards addressing particular issues of the day or solving them necessarily. I think what you guys do is really something much broader than the pure pay-for-play. I think these are conferences that bring the depth and quality of the speakers today and the panelists is an example of that. And so as a firm, we only participate in stuff like this. We don't really do the regular conference circuit, principally because those are only marketing exercises, where these are predominantly forums which bring together decision makers from all across the spectrum and lead to outcomes that you can see years down the road. I'll meet people and say, remember the conference, this is kind of where we start talking about this stuff.